12 nannies, 12 resignations in 6 months. All of them fled the opulent Manhattan penthouse of billionaire Arthur Blackwell, haunted by his 7-year-old daughter. They called Serafina Blackwell unmanageable, violent, and disturbed. The tabloids, led by the New York Chronicle, had a simpler name, the Billionaire's Brat. But then came Clara Sullivan, a 24-year-old waitress from Queens, drowning in her mother's medical debt, with 0 childcare experience. She was the only person desperate enough to answer the ad. The entire world expected her to be nanny number 13. What they didn't know was that Clara had one simple trick, learned from years of handling the city's worst customers, and it wasn't meant for the daughter. The clatter of ceramic on ceramic was the soundtrack to Clara Sullivan's life. It was 8 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the Midtown diner was in the throes of a dinner rush that felt personal. Sullivan. Table 4 needs a check, Table 7 says his coffee is cold, and the couple at the booth just asked if the artisan lettuce is really artisan, barked her manager, Sal, his apron stained with marinara. Got it, Clara mumbled, balancing 3 heavy plates on her left arm. Her white sneakers, a size too large, squelched slightly from the water she'd spilled an hour ago. Every muscle in her back and feet screamed in protest. She'd been on a double shift, 16 hours and counting, and her total tips for the day so far wouldn't even cover the co-pay for her mother's medication. She moved to Table 7, a man in a rumpled suit glaring at his mug. "Sir, I can get you a fresh cup right away," she said, her voice practiced, smooth and utterly devoid of her own exhaustion. This was the voice she used for angry customers, the waitress voice. It was a shield. "It should have been hot the first time," he grumbled, not looking at her. "You're absolutely right, sir. My apologies. I'll get that fixed." As she turned, her phone vibrated in her apron pocket. She knew who it was. She ignored it, grabbing the coffee pot. The vibration came again. And again. A cold spike of dread cut through her fatigue. She ducked into the staff break room, a closet with a flickering fluorescent light, and pulled out the phone. 3 missed calls from Maplewood Senior Care. Her hands trembled as she dialed back. "This is Clara Sullivan, for my mother, Eleanor." The voice on the other end was sympathetic, which was always worse. "Ms. Sullivan, we need to discuss your mother's account. The payment for this month was declined, and there was an incident. She had another fall. The doctor wants to see her." But without the account being current, Clara leaned her head against the grimy wall. I get paid on Friday. Can you just give me until Friday?" "Clara, we've extended the grace period twice. The board policy is strict. If the account isn't settled by tomorrow, we'll have to initiate transfer proceedings to a state facility." "No!" Clara's voice was sharp, desperate. "No, please, I'll get it. I'll get the money tonight, I promise." She hung up, her heart hammering against her ribs. The amount outstanding was $5,800. It might as well have been $5 million. She walked out of the break room, grabbed her apron, and untied it. "Sal, I have to go." "Go! Sullivan, look at this floor. You can't just—" "It's my mum. It's an emergency." She didn't wait for a reply. She grabbed her worn coat and ran out into the drizzling New York night, the diner's neon sign casting a sickly pink glow on the wet pavement. She was halfway to the subway, tears blurring the city lights, when she stopped. Running wouldn't help. She needed a miracle. She ducked under the awning of a closed newsstand to check her bank account, knowing it was useless. 43 hours. She scrolled desperately through job sites on her phone, looking for anything, night cleaning, dog walking, anything. And then she saw it, an ad in the New York Chronicle's online classifieds. It was stark, bold, and sounded like a joke. Nanny wanted, AB Enterprises, must be available 24/7, must be resilient, patient, and emotionally impervious. No childcare experience necessary, as it has proven to be a disadvantage. Applicant must be willing to sign a comprehensive 5-year non-disclosure agreement. Compensation, $250,000 a year, non-negotiable. Address, 885th Avenue, Penthouse A. Interviewing, immediately. Walk-ins accepted. Clara stared at the screen. 250,000. It was a typo. It had to be. 885th Avenue. She knew that building. It loomed over Central Park, a palace of glass and limestone. This was billionaire territory. Emotionally impervious. No experience necessary. This was a trap, or a scam, or it was her only chance. She looked at her reflection in the dark newsstand window. Her hair was frizzy from the rain, her diner uniform was wrinkled, and there was a small ketchup stain on her sleeve. She didn't look like a Fifth Avenue nanny. She looked like what she was, a waitress on the worst day of her life. They need someone emotionally impervious, she thought, remembering the man with the cold coffee. They need someone resilient. She thought of the 16-hour shifts. They need someone who can sign an NDA. She thought of her mother's face. She wouldn't just be ignored, she'd be laughed at. But $5,800 was due tomorrow. What have I got to lose? She whispered to the empty street. She smoothed her hair, wiped the ketchup stain, it only smeared, and started walking toward Fifth Avenue. She didn't have subway fare for a round trip anyway. She would walk the 30 blocks in the rain. An hour later, Clara Sullivan stood in the lobby of 885th Avenue, dripping onto a marble floor that probably cost more than her mother's entire care facility. The lobby was silent, sterile, and smelled faintly of expensive lilies. A doorman in a crisp, military-style uniform eyed her with unconcealed disdain. "Can I help you?" His voice was as cold as the marble. "I'm here for the nanny position," Clara said, her voice small, the doorman's eyebrow raised. "The nanny position. For Mr. Blackwell, I see. Do you have an appointment?" The ad said walk-ins were accepted. He sighed, a sound of profound suffering, and picked up a brass phone. "Security. Walk-in for the Blackwell position is here. Yes. Yes, I'll send her up." He gestured to a private, gold-plated elevator. "Penthouse. Mr. Blackwell's assistant will meet you." Clara's stomach did a flip-flop. The elevator ride was silent and terrifyingly fast. It opened directly into the apartment, or rather, a private foyer that was larger than her entire diner. The walls were grey stone. The air was cold. A woman with a severe black bun and a face that looked carved from ice stood waiting. "Miss Sullivan," the woman said. It wasn't a question. "I am Mrs. Davies, the household manager. Follow me." Clara followed her through a cavernous living room. It was less a home than a modern art museum. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased a staggering, rain-swept view of Central Park. The furniture was minimal, angular, and looked like it had never been sat on. There was not a single toy, a single photograph, a single sign of life. They entered a study lined with dark wood. A man stood silhouetted against the window, watching the storm over the park. He was tall, dressed in a flawless, custom-tailored suit, and didn't turn around. "This is the last one, Mrs. Davies." His voice was deep, clipped, and radiated impatience. "I don't have time for more." "Yes, Mr. Blackwell. This is Clara Sullivan." Arthur Blackwell turned. He was perhaps 40, with sharp features, dark hair greyed at the temples, and the coldest blue eyes Clara had ever seen. He didn't just look at her. He assessed her, like a piece of faulty equipment. "You're a waitress," he stated, glancing at a single-page printout of the application she'd filled out in the lobby. "You have no degree. You have no childcare certifications. You have no references related to this field. You have, in fact, 0 qualifications for this position." "The ad said no experience necessary," Clara said, her hands clasped tightly to stop them from shaking. It said it had proven to be a disadvantage, Arthur corrected. The last 3 nannies had PhDs in child psychology. They lasted an average of 4 days. The one before that was a former royal guard. She lasted 6 hours. He stepped closer. My daughter, Serafina, is 7 years old. She is specific in her needs. She does not respond to traditional authority. She does not respond to bribery. She does not, it seems, respond to kindness. She is a highly difficult child. 12 women have failed this job. Why on earth would you be the 13th? Clara's fear was suddenly eclipsed by a flash of anger. This man, with his billion-dollar view, was complaining about difficult. He had no idea. Mr. Blackwell, she said, and her waitress voice was gone, replaced by the blunt exhaustion of her 16-hour shift. I don't know anything about PhDs, but for the last 6 years, I've worked the Saturday night shift at a diner in Midtown. I've had businessmen scream at me because their steak was medium instead of medium rare. I've had drunk finance bros try to grab me. I've had entitled tourists snap their fingers in my face. I've had to calm down a chef who sets fires when he's stressed and a busboy who cries in the freezer. I do it all for 12 hours, on my feet, without a break. And I do it with a smile, for a 15% tip. She took a breath. You say your daughter is difficult. I've handled a bachelorette party of 15 at 2 a.m. I'm not scared of a 7-year-old. I'm emotionally impervious because my life depends on it. You need someone who won't quit. I can't afford to quit. That's my only qualification. There was a heavy silence. Mrs. Davies looked horrified. Arthur Blackwell just stared. A flicker of something passed through his cold eyes. Not warmth, but perhaps respect. Mrs. Davies, he said, not looking away from Clara. Take Miss Sullivan to the Red Room. Let her meet Serafina. Mrs. Davies paled. Mr. Blackwell, perhaps that's not... The girl is in one of her moods. If she can't handle a mood, she's wasting my time. Go. Mrs. Davies led Clara down a long, white hallway. A word of advice, Miss Sullivan. Do not try to touch her. Do not ask her questions. And if she presents you with anything, do not, under any circumstances, accept it. Presents me with, like a gift? Mrs. Davies didn't answer. She stopped at a heavy, bright red door and pushed it open. She's in here. Clara stepped inside. The room was massive but sparse. A bed, a desk, a large window. And in the far corner, sitting on the floor, was a small girl. She had her father's dark hair and a pale porcelain face. She was wearing a simple white dress and was methodically pulling the legs off a large, very realistic-looking toy spider. Serafina, Mrs. Davies said, her voice tight. This is Ms. Sullivan. She's here to interview. Serafina didn't look up. She just ripped the last leg off the spider and threw the body against the wall. Hello, Serafina, Clara said gently. My name is Clara. Serafina finally looked up. Her eyes were not her father's cold blue, but a deep, piercing and intelligent black. She stared at Clara, her expression completely blank. She was a beautiful child, but there was a chilling stillness to her. She stood up, walked to her desk, picked something up, and walked over to Clara. She held out her hand. In her palm was a small, dead mouse. Clara flinched internally, but her face, trained by years of seeing mouldy food in the back of the diner fridge, remained neutral. She heard Mrs. Davies inhale sharply. Serafina watched her, a tiny, almost imperceptible smirk on her lips. This was the test. The real interview. Clara looked at the mouse, then back at Serafina's unwavering gaze. Oh, honey, Clara said, her voice full of the same practical sympathy she'd use for a customer who'd spilled soup on their tie. You shouldn't be holding that. It's full of germs. She didn't scream. She didn't recoil. She didn't scold. She simply reached past Serafina, grabbed a tissue from the box on the desk, gently scooped the mouse from the girl's hand, and dropped it into the wastebasket. "Now, let's get you washed up for dinner, okay?" Clara said, holding out her hand. "I'm starving. I wonder if they have grilled cheese here." Serafina Blackwell stared at her. The smirk was gone. Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in pure, unfiltered confusion. She had pulled her ultimate weapon, and the new nanny had just tissue-boxed it. Clara stood, her hand outstretched. After a long, tense 30 seconds, Serafina slowly, tentatively, placed her small, cold hand in Clara's. Behind them in the hallway, Mrs. Davies's jaw was on the floor. Clara Sullivan was hired before she even left the Red Room. Arthur Blackwell simply appeared at the door, took in the scene, Clara and Serafina walking hand in hand toward the bathroom, and nodded once. "Mrs. Davies," he said, his voice low, "wire the signing bonus to Ms. Sullivan's account. Have the NDA and employment contract ready within the hour. Ms. Sullivan, your belongings will be collected from your apartment tomorrow. You start immediately." He didn't ask if she agreed. He didn't congratulate her. He simply stated the facts and disappeared. Clara felt a dizzying wave of relief, so powerful her knees buckled. The signing bonus was $10,000. Her mother was safe. She had done it. The euphoria lasted until Mrs. Davies handed her the 40-page non-disclosure agreement. It was less a contract than a threat, detailing the financial and legal ruin that would befall her if she ever spoke a word of what she saw or heard inside the penthouse. "Mr. Blackwell values his privacy above all else," Mrs. Davies said, her voice clipped. "You will have a staff uniform. You will reside in the staff quarters. Your hours are 24/7. Serafina is your only priority. Is that clear?" "Crystal clear," Clara said, signing her name. The first week was a brutal education. The truce she'd earned with the dead mouse incident was short-lived. Serafina, it turned out, was not just a prankster. She was a master of psychological warfare. Her primary weapon was silence. She wouldn't speak, not to Clara, not to her father, not to Mrs. Davies. She communicated in glares, in pointedly turned shoulders, and in small acts of chaos. On Monday, Clara's pristine black uniform was found, soaking in a bathtub full of bright blue paint. Clara, remembering her diner training, how to handle a kitchen-sent-the-wrong-order crisis, simply nodded, retrieved her old waitress uniform from her luggage, and showed up for breakfast. "Blue's a good color on you, but I think I'll stick to black," she said to a non-responsive Sarah. On Tuesday, while Clara was reading in the living room, Serafina, with the stealth of a cat, snipped the power cord to Clara's laptop, her only link to the outside world and her mother. Clara found it and simply sighed. "Well, that's a problem. Guess we'll have to play Go Fish instead of me checking my email. You like cards?" Sarah stormed off. On Wednesday, Sarah staged her most elaborate trap. She'd built a complex spill involving a large vase of water balanced precariously on her bedroom door. The moment Clara opened it, a gallon of icy water and lilies crashed down, drenching her. Clara stood there, shivering, soaked to the bone. Sarah watched from her bed, her face a mask, waiting for the explosion. This was the moment Nanny number 12 had supposedly snapped. Clara just pushed her wet hair out of her eyes. "Okay," she said, her voice level. "That was ambitious. Good engineering. 10 out of 10 for execution. But now the floor is soaked, and Mrs. Davies is going to be furious." Clara walked to the linen closet, grabbed a stack of towels and threw one to Sarah. "You're not in trouble. But you helped make the mess. You're helping clean it up. That's the rule in the diner. That's the rule here." Sarah looked at the towel, then at Clara, as if she'd been handed a live snake. "I don't clean," Sarah whispered, her first words to Clara in 3 days. "Well, today you do," Clara said, already on her knees, sopping up the water. After a 10-minute standoff, Sarah slid off the bed and, with profound reluctance, started dabbing at the puddle. Clara was beginning to understand. This wasn't a difficult child. This was a child fighting a war, but Clara couldn't figure out who the enemy was. The second player in the household, and the most confusing, was Lady Beatrice Croft. Beatrice was Arthur Blackwell's fiancée. She was stunning, a tall, blonde English aristocrat with a voice like honey and a wardrobe that dripped effortless wealth. She would glide into the penthouse in the afternoons, kiss Arthur, and treat Serafina with a display of maternal affection that was so perfect it felt staged. "Oh, darling Sarah," she would coo, rushing to the girl. "Look what I've brought you, a genuine porcelain doll from Geneva." Sarah would flinch, a tiny, almost invisible movement, and stare at the doll with open hatred. "What's wrong, darling?" Beatrice would ask, her perfect brow furrowed in concern. "Don't you like it? I tried so hard to find one you'd love." She'd turn to Arthur, her eyes glistening. "Oh, Arthur, she still hates me. I just don't know what I'm doing wrong." Arthur, who seemed bewildered by all emotion, would pat her shoulder awkwardly. "She's difficult, Beatrice. Don't take it personally." But Clara saw it, the waitress in her, the part that lived on reading a customer's true intentions, saw it clearly. She saw the way Beatrice's smile never, ever reached her eyes. She saw the way Beatrice's manicured hand would rest on Sarah's shoulder, her fingers gripping just a little too tight. And she saw the look Beatrice gave Clara when Arthur wasn't in the room, a look of cold, reptilian assessment. It was the same look the health inspector gave the diner's walk-in fridge. One afternoon, Clara was in the kitchen, getting Sarah a snack. Apple slices, the only thing Sarah would reliably eat. Beatrice entered, having just arrived. "You're the new one, aren't you?" Beatrice said, pouring herself a glass of mineral water. "The waitress." She said the word like it was a contagious disease. "I am. Clara Sullivan. How brave of you, to take on her." Beatrice gestured down the hall towards Sarah's room. "She's an absolute terror, isn't she? Honestly, Arthur is a saint, but I've told him, some children just aren't right. They're better off, managed, professionally." "She seems like a normal kid to me," Clara said evenly, arranging the apple slices on a plate. "She's just lonely." Beatrice let out a tinkling laugh. "Oh, you're one of those, the saviors? How quaint. Let me give you some advice, darling. My last nanny, the one with the PhD, she tried to save Sarah, too. She tried to interfere. She's working at a community college in Delaware now." The threat was unmistakable. "I am the future Mrs. Blackwell. You are the help. Know your place." "I'm not trying to save anyone," Clara replied, picking up the plate. "I'm just here to do my job. Make sure she eats, doesn't get flooded, and stays alive. Excuse me." She walked past Beatrice, whose smile had frozen into a mask of polite fury. Clara felt a chill run down her spine. The difficult customer wasn't the 7-year-old. It was the fiancé. The stalemate between Clara and Serafina continued for 2 weeks. It was a cold war of small rebellions and patient, unruffled responses. Clara had stopped trying to be a nanny. She was just present. She operated like she was waiting on the world's quietest, most high-stakes table. She didn't force Sarah to talk. She didn't force her to play. She would simply bring her own work, researching community college courses online now that her laptop was replaced, and sit in Sarah's room, a quiet, steady presence. "Okay, I'm just going to be over here," she'd say. "If you need anything, just give me a shout." Sarah would continue to glare, but the glares were becoming less hostile. They were curious. This nanny didn't cry. She didn't yell. She didn't quit. She just stayed. The breakthrough came on a frigid Thursday night. Arthur Blackwell was in Shanghai. Beatrice Blessedly was at a charity gala. Mrs. Davies had retired for the night. It was just Clara and Sarah in the vast, silent penthouse. Clara was folding laundry in Sarah's room, while Sarah watched a nature documentary. Suddenly, Sarah got up, walked to the large balcony door, slid it open, and stepped outside into the freezing November air. Clara, busy with a stubborn fitted sheet, didn't notice for a moment. When she looked up, she saw Sarah standing on the balcony. Then Sarah turned, looked directly at Clara, and slid the heavy glass door shut. Clara heard the distinct click of the lock. Clara's heart stopped. She ran to the door and tugged. Locked. The wind was howling outside, and Sarah was standing in it, wearing only her light pajamas. "Sarah! Seraphina, open the door! It's freezing!" Clara banged on the glass. Sarah just stared at her, her expression unreadable. "This isn't funny. Open the door now!" Clara's voice was rising in panic. She jiggled the handle, but it was solid. She was locked in. Sarah was locked out. No, wait. Clara looked again. Sarah was on the balcony. Clara was in the warm room. Sarah had locked herself out. Or was she trying to? Clara's blood ran cold. She banged harder. "Sarah, I'm serious. You'll get sick. Open the door." Sarah didn't move. She just watched Clara, her small face pale. This was a test, Clara realized. A massive, dangerous test. Panicking was what Sarah wanted. Yelling was what she expected. Clara forced herself to take a breath. De-escalate the customer. Don't react to the theatrics. Solve the problem. Clara stopped banging. She looked at Sarah through the glass. Then she walked over to Sarah's bed, grabbed the thickest, heaviest duvet she could find, and went back to the door. She held it up for Sarah to see. Her voice was calm again. "Okay. I see you're angry. You have a right to be angry, but it's cold, and I don't want you to be sick." Clara pointed to the lock. "You're going to have to unlock that door, sweetie. I can't break the glass, and you'll freeze before I can find a key." Sarah just stared. The wind whipped her dark hair across her face. Clara's heart was pounding, but her voice was a steady, warm murmur. "I get it. You're trying to see if I'll leave, like all the others. You're waiting for me to call you a monster and quit, right?" Sarah's lower lip trembled. It was the first crack in the facade Clara had ever seen. "Well, I'm not quitting," Clara said. "But I am cold just looking at you, and I'm not going to stand here and watch you hurt yourself. That's not in my job description." Clara did the only thing she could think of. She couldn't get to Sarah, so she would join her. Clara walked to the other balcony door, the one in the main living room. She slid it open and stepped out into the freezing wind, pulling the heavy duvet with her. The penthouse had a wraparound terrace. She walked around the corner, the wind cutting through her thin uniform. Sarah turned, her eyes wide with shock, as Clara appeared on the same balcony. Clara didn't say anything. She just walked over to the shivering girl, wrapped the huge warm duvet around both of them, and sat down on a patio lounger, pulling Sarah against her. Sarah was stiff as a board, vibrating with cold and shock. "That was a very dangerous," Clara said, her voice quiet. "But it was also very brave. You must be really, really scared to do something like that." They sat in silence for a long minute, cocooned in the blanket, the city lights twinkling far below. They all hate me," Sarah whispered, her voice so small Clara barely heard it over the wind. "I don't hate you," Clara said, rubbing the girl's arms. "You will." "No, I won't. I've had customers throw hot soup on me, Sarah. This is nothing." A tiny choked sound came from Sarah. It might have been a laugh. "Why are you so angry?" Clara asked gently. Sarah was quiet for a long time. Then she burrowed her face into Clara's chest and said the one word that changed everything. "Her? Her? Who, sweetie? Your mom?" Sarah shook her head violently. No, her, the lady. Clara's blood turned to ice. Beatrice? Sarah flinched, a full-body shudder that had nothing to do with the cold. She looked up at Clara, her dark eyes wide with a terror that was ancient and profound. She told me, Sarah whispered, tears now freezing on her cheeks, that if I ever told Daddy, she would make him send me away. To a hospital. Forever. She said she'd tell him I hurt her. And he would believe her, because everyone already knows I'm bad. And there it was. The simple trick. It was never a trick at all. The other nannies, the psychologists, the royal guard, they had all been trying to fix the daughter. They were playing the wrong game. Clara's only trick was that she was a waitress. She was trained to ignore the person screaming and find the real problem. The child wasn't the difficult customer. She was the one sending the food back, trying to warn everyone that the kitchen was on fire. Clara? Sarah's voice was small. Are you mad? Clara held the shivering girl tighter. The anger she felt was so cold and pure it burned. It wasn't for Sarah. It was for Beatrice. No, sweetie, Clara said, her voice shaking with a sudden protective fury. I'm not mad at you, not even a little bit. Now let's go inside. We have a lot to talk about. And then we're going to make a plan. Getting Sarah inside and warm was the first priority. Clara ran a hot bath for her, filled with bubbles, and sat on the tiled floor while the girl soaked. The dam of silence, now broken, unleashed a torrent. Sarah, small and pink in the giant tub, recounted the reign of terror that had been her life for the past 6 months, ever since Arthur and Beatrice had announced their engagement. She waits, Sarah whispered, her eyes fixed on a plastic boat. She waits until Daddy is on a call, or Mrs. Davies is downstairs. Then she comes into my room. What does she do, Sarah? Clara asked, keeping her voice as calm as if she were taking a lunch order. She pinches me. Hard. On my arm here. Sarah pointed to her upper arm, just below the shoulder. She says it's our little secret. And she says that Mummy died because I was bad, that I was too much work, and that's why she got sick. Clara felt bile rise in her throat. Serafina's mother, a woman named Isabella, had died of a sudden aneurysm 3 years ago. The tragedy was the one thing the Chronicle had reported with sympathy. Arthur Blackwell had apparently been devastated. And she broke Mr. Bear. Sarah's voice cracked, the first real sob escaping. My mummy gave me Mr. Bear, and Beatrice said he was dirty and smelled like a hospital. She cut his ear off with her scissors. And then she told Daddy I did it, that I was being destructive again. Clara's mind flashed back. The blue paint in the bathtub, the cut laptop cord, the dead mouse. Sarah, Clara said, her voice sharp with a sudden realization. The paint, the laptop, the mouse. Was that you? Sarah looked at her, confused. The mouse was, and the water on the door, but the paint and the laptop, no, I thought you did it, to try and trick me. Clara's blood ran cold. Beatrice had framed Sarah. She was staging the bad behavior to sell the narrative to Arthur. She was isolating the girl, terrorizing her, and pushing her to act out, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. And the nannies? The other nannies, Sarah. Why did they leave? The first one, she saw Beatrice lock me in the pantry. She yelled at her. Beatrice told my dad that the nanny was unstable and screamed at me. Daddy fired her. And the others? I scared them away, Sarah admitted, sinking lower in the bubbles. I heard what Beatrice told the first one. So, I scared the others. On purpose. I put the spider in Nanny number 10's bed. And I told Nanny number 12 that I was going to push her down the stairs. Why, Sarah? Why would you do that?" "'Cause I knew. They wouldn't believe me," Sarah cried. "They all believed her. She's an adult. She's pretty, she smiles. I knew they wouldn't help. I wanted them to go away. It's safer when it's just me." She was scaring them away for her own protection. She was a 7-year-old soldier, defending her territory, waiting for an enemy she couldn't defeat to just leave. "Well, I'm not leaving," Clara said, her voice hard as steel. She pulled the plug on the tub. "Get out, get dried, we have work to do." Clara knew, with the certainty of a waitress spotting a dine and dasher, that they could not just tell Arthur. Beatrice had spent 6 months building a case against his disturbed daughter. It would be Sarah's word against the word of his beautiful, sophisticated, loving fiancé. Arthur, a man who saw the world in spreadsheets and profits, was blind. He wouldn't believe them. "When you tell a manager a customer is a problem," Clara muttered to herself, pacing Sarah's room, "you don't go in without a receipt. You need proof. Hard proof." "Proof?" Sarah asked, toweling her hair. "We need to catch her, Sarah. We need to show your dad what she's really like." Clara looked around the room. The entire penthouse was a fortress. Arthur Blackwell was a man who valued security. "Mrs. Davies told me there are cameras," Clara said, "in the main rooms, for security." "She knows," Sarah said instantly. "She's always good in the hall, and in the living room. She only does it in my room. Or her dressing room. There's no camera in my room. Daddy said I needed privacy." A dead end. Clara paced, her brain, so used to juggling 10 tables, complex orders, and kitchen timers, was spinning. Observation, timing, using the tools at hand. "Your dad, he's a tech guy, right? Blackwell Global. They do software, security systems." I think so," Sarah said. Clara walked to the wall panel by Sarah's door. It was a high-tech smart home console. It controlled the lights, the temperature, the curtains, and it had a small, pinhole-sized dot. "Sarah," Clara said, her heart speeding up. "What's this?" "It's the intercom, for Mrs. Davies, so I can call her, or she can talk to me." An audio intercom, not video, but... Does it record? I don't know. Clara raced down the hall to the staff quarters. Her room was small, but it had an identical panel. She found the manual for the Blackwell Home OS in her welcome packet. She tore through the pages. Inter-room communication. Voice-activated commands. And then, buried in the System Administration section. Audio logging. For security and staff review, all intercom communications are automatically logged and stored on the central server for 72 hours. To access logs, enter administrator credentials on the main console, security room. It was designed to monitor staff, but it could be used to catch a monster. "Clara," Sarah had followed her. "What is it?" "It's the receipt," Clara said, a slow, cold smile spreading across her face. "Now, we just need her to place an order." The plan formed quickly. It was simple, and it was devious. It relied on 2 things: Beatrice's arrogance and her obsession with an upcoming event. The Blackwell Annual Charity Gala. It wasn't at a hotel this year. For the first time, Arthur was hosting the pre-gala donor dinner at the penthouse. It was in 2 days. It was Beatrice's official debut as the future Mrs. Blackwell. Every major name in New York, including, Clara had heard, Senator James Harrison and the Chronicle's publisher, would be there. Beatrice was obsessed with it. She'd been in a frenzy for weeks, desperate for it to be perfect. "She's been meaner," Sarah confirmed. "She said if I ruin her party, she'll do the boarding school thing in Switzerland." "She's stressed," Clara said, "and when a customer is stressed, they make mistakes. They get sloppy." "So, what do we do?" "You're going to ruin her party, Sarah," Clara said. "Or at least, She's going to think you are. The day of the dinner party, the penthouse was electric with tension. Florists, caterers, and lighting technicians moved with quiet efficiency, transforming the already stunning space into a glittering jewel box. Mrs. Davies was a whirlwind of sharp commands, her face a mask of anxious control. Arthur Blackwell was in his study, taking calls, and Lady Beatrice Croft was in her element, directing the staff, her voice a melodious but firm instrument of her will. She was wearing a silk robe, her hair in rollers, a vision of pre-party glamour. Clara kept Sarah in her room, out of the way. They spent the morning rehearsing. The most important part, Sarah, Clara explained, kneeling in front of the girl, is that you can't be scared. Not today. You have to be mad. You have to be the difficult child she's always telling your dad you are. Can you do that for me? Sarah's small face hardened. I can be mad at her. Good. When she comes in here, I'm going to activate the intercom. I'll just say, Mrs. Davies, can you check on the snack order? That will start the log. The system only records when the line is open. I'll keep it open. Then, you do what we practiced. But what if she hurts me? Sarah's voice was small. Clara's hand tightened on her shoulder. I'll be right outside the door. I will not let her hurt you. The second I have what we need, I'm coming in. I promise. At 4:10 p.m., 2 hours before guests arrived, Beatrice was in her dressing room, beginning her makeup. This was the time. Clara walked to Sarah's door. Ready? Sarah nodded, her jaw set. Clara went to her own room, just down the hall. She pressed the intercom panel. Mrs. Davies, this is Clara. Can you just double-check on the vegetarian canapé order? I think there was a miscount. One moment, Miss Sullivan. Mrs. Davies's voice replied, tinny and stressed. Clara didn't disconnect. The line was open. The log was active. She walked silently down the hall and stood in the alcove opposite Sarah's room, hidden from view, but close enough to hear everything. Now. From Sarah's room, there was a sudden, tremendous crash. It wasn't a plate. It sounded like a lamp. A moment later, Beatrice's voice echoed down the hall. What in God's name was that? Clara heard her dressing room door fly open. Heavy, fast footsteps. Beatrice stormed into Sarah's room. What did you do? Beatrice screamed. On the floor was the shattered, 1,000-piece ruin of a massive, ugly, modern art vase. It was an accident. Sarah's voice was high and defiant. An accident. You monster! Beatrice shrieked, her voice losing all its honeyed polish. Do you know what that was? That was a gift from Senator Harrison for the auction tonight. Did you do this on purpose, to ruin my party? I hate your party, Sarah screamed back. And I hate you. Good girl, Sarah, Clara thought, her heart pounding. You hate me? Beatrice's voice dropped to a venomous hiss. Clara could practically hear her grabbing at the girl. You little brat. I have tried to be kind to you. I have tried to be a mother to you, even though you're the one who drove your own mother to her death. No. Yes. Your father knows it. He just won't say it. He can't wait to get rid of you. And I am his golden ticket. You think you're going to ruin this for me? You think your little tantrums matter? Let go of me. You're hurting me. I will do more than hurt you, you ungrateful little wretch. Once I am Mrs. Arthur Blackwell, you are gone. You are going to a school in the Swiss mountains, a place for broken children. You will be so far away, your father will forget you in a month. You will have no friends. You will have nothing. You will be alone, just like you deserve. No, I'll tell Daddy. I'll tell him. There was a sharp smack. Clara's blood boiled. That was it. She burst from the alcove. She flew into the room just as Beatrice had her hand raised to strike Sarah again. The woman's face was a grotesque mask of rage, her blonde hair falling from its rollers. Sarah was cowering, a bright red mark blooming on her cheek. "Get away from her!" Clara's voice was a roar. Beatrice froze, her eyes widening in shock. She hadn't expected to be seen. In an instant, the mask snapped back into place. Tears welled in her eyes. "Oh, thank God you're here, Clara," Beatrice sobbed, rushing past Clara and collapsing into the hallway. "You saw it. She attacked me. The little... She's completely out of control. She threw that vase at my head." She was already spinning the story, brilliant and fast. "She's lying," Sarah screamed from the doorway. "Oh, my poor baby," Beatrice cried, clutching her head as if she'd been struck. "Arthur! Arthur!" Arthur Blackwell burst from his study, his face a thundercloud. "What is all this shouting? Guests will be here in an hour." "Arthur, darling." Beatrice stumbled into his arms, sobbing hysterically. It was Serafina. She just went insane. She threw that priceless vase. She tried to hit me. And then she scratched me." Beatrice held up her arm, where Clara noted with cold admiration 3 perfect red nail marks were now welling up. She must have done it to herself in the split second Clara entered. "She's lying, Daddy!" Sarah shrieked, tears of rage and pain streaming down her face. "She hit me! She's the monster!" Arthur looked from his hysterical, assaulted fiancée to his screaming, unhinged daughter. He looked at the shattered vase. His face was cold, hard, and resigned. "Clara," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Did you see what happened?" Clara looked at Arthur. She looked at Beatrice, whose eyes were full of triumphant, venomous tears. And she looked at Sarah, whose small face was a portrait of utter betrayal. This was the moment. "Yes, Mr. Blackwell," Clara said, her voice perfectly calm. "I saw everything." Beatrice's sob hitched. "But I think you should hear it for yourself. From the beginning." Arthur looked confused. "Hear what?" "Lady Beatrice," Clara said, her voice as polite as if she were offering coffee. "You have a little... something on your robe. From the vase." Beatrice looked down, confused. "What? Right there?" As Beatrice looked down, Clara looked at Arthur. "Mr. Blackwell, you should check the audio log for the staff intercom. Specifically, the log from my room to Mrs. Davies, opened at 4:02 p.m. The entire incident is recorded. I'm sure it will clear everything up." The blood drained from Beatrice's face. Her sobbing stopped instantly. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with pure, undiluted panic. "What? What audio log?" Beatrice stammered. "What is she talking about, Arthur? She's in on it. They planned this." But Arthur wasn't looking at her. He was looking at Clara, and he was looking at the small, pinhole intercom on Sarah's wall. His face, the face of a tech billionaire who knew exactly what his systems could do, turned to stone. "Mrs. Davies," Arthur said, his voice terrifyingly soft. "Cancel the dinner. Get everyone out. Now, Arthur. Darling, don't be ridiculous. We can't..." "And escort Lady Croft to her room," Arthur continued, his eyes locked on Beatrice's. "Have her pack her things. She won't be staying for the party." "Arthur, you're not serious." Beatrice's voice was a desperate squeak. The mask of the grieving fiancé was gone, replaced by the pinched, pale face of a cornered animal. "You can't be. You're taking the word of a waitress and a psychotic child over me." Arthur Blackwell didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The cold fury radiating from him sucked all the air from the hallway. "Clara," he said, "take Serafina to the kitchen. Get her some ice for her face." The casual, factual confirmation that he knew Sarah had been hit was more damning than any accusation. Clara nodded, gently taking a stunned, silent Sarah by the hand and leading her away. "Arthur! No!" Beatrice shrieked, grabbing his arm. "She's lying! They set me up! I love you! That child needs to be institutionalized. I was trying to protect you." "Mrs. Davies," Arthur repeated, his voice like a razor. "Get her out of my sight, and bring my personal tablet to the security room, now." Mrs. Davies, her face white but her spine rigid, took Beatrice firmly by the arm. "My lady, this way, please." "You can't do this," Beatrice wept, her heels scraping on the marble as she was half dragged away. I'll tell the Chronicle. I'll tell them everything. I'll ruin you." "The NDA you signed is identical to Ms. Sullivan's," Arthur's voice floated down the hall. "Except your breach of contract penalty is $50 million. I'd advise you to remain silent." The sound of her hysterics faded as they disappeared down the hall. Clara sat with Sarah at the massive steel kitchen island, holding a bag of frozen peas wrapped in a tea towel to the girl's cheek. The catering staff had vanished, leaving behind trays of untouched, perfect canapes. Sarah was silent, vibrating with shock. Did he believe me?" she whispered. "He's going to," Clara said. "He just needs to see. Well, hear the receipt." They sat in silence for 10 minutes. The only sound was the hum of the sub-zero freezer. Finally, footsteps approached. It was Arthur Blackwell. He looked 10 years older. His suit jacket was off, his tie was loosened, and his eyes were hollow. He walked over and stopped, looking not at Clara, but at his daughter. He knelt, so they were eye to eye. His hands were trembling. He slowly, gently, reached out and brushed the hair from her face, his fingers tracing the red mark on her cheek. "Sarah," he whispered, and his voice was thick, broken. I am so sorry." Sarah just stared at him. I heard it all. Every word. What she said about your mother. What she did." He closed his eyes, overcome. "I am so sorry. I didn't see it. I was a fool. I didn't protect you." And Serafina, who had faced down nannies and balconies and monsters, finally crumpled. She didn't cry. She sobbed, a deep, agonizing sound of 6 months of terror and loneliness, and launched herself into her father's arms, burying her face in his shirt. Arthur Blackwell held his daughter, his eyes shut tight, rocking her as she cried. He looked over her head at Clara, his expression one of profound, agonizing gratitude. "You," he started, his voice rough. "You saved her." "She saved herself," Clara said softly, putting the peas down. She was just waiting for someone to finally listen. Your system just gave her a voice. The system... Arthur shook his head, a dark irony playing on his lips. "I designed that log to catch staff who were inefficient. I never dreamed." He stood, lifting Sarah with him. She refused to let go, her arms locked around his neck. "Beatrice is gone," he said. "The doorman is escorting her out. Her things will be sent to her. The engagement is obviously over. The gala is cancelled. I've already had my legal team contact the Chronicle and Senator Harrison with a family emergency explanation." He looked at Clara. "Ms. Sullivan, Clara, what she said about your interference. She threatened your job. She threatened you. It's like I said, Mr. Blackwell," Clara said, standing up. "I've handled worse." He managed a small, pained smile. "I don't even know what to say. The contract, the $250,000, it's not enough. Not nearly enough. Whatever you want. A new job, head of household, my personal assistant, a blank check. Name it. It's yours." Clara looked at this man, one of the most powerful in the world, brought to his knees by the courage of his daughter and the audio log from a staff intercom. She thought about her waitress uniform, her $43 bank account, and the diner. It felt like another lifetime. "Mr. Blackwell, Arthur," she said, "I'm not a nanny. I'm not a PA. I'm a waitress, and I'm good at it. I'm good at managing chaos. I'm good at seeing what people really need, not just what they ask for." She took a deep breath. "I don't want a blank check. But I do have a proposal." Arthur, still holding his daughter, looked at her, intrigued. "Go on. Your company has a charitable foundation, the Blackwell Family Fund. I looked it up when I was researching you. It's unfocused. It gives a little to the opera, a little to a museum. It's a tax shelter." Arthur raised an eyebrow. "You're direct, I'll give you that." "I want you to really fund it," Clara said, her voice gaining strength. "And I want to run it. Not as a figurehead. I want to run it. I want to take that money and redirect all of it to at-risk youth, foster kids, kids in bad homes, kids like Sarah, who are trapped and have no one to talk to. I'll use my waitress skills to find the people who really need help. That's my price." Arthur Blackwell stared at her. He looked at his daughter, who had finally stopped crying and was now watching Clara with a look of pure awe. He looked at Clara, this young woman who had walked in off the street, faced down his monster daughter, unmasked his perfect fiancée, and was now, essentially, demanding he give his fortune away. He slowly, finally, began to smile. It was a real smile, and it transformed his face. "Ms. Sullivan," Arthur Blackwell said, "you are, without a doubt, the most terrifyingly competent person I have ever met. When can you start?" 6 months later, the sterile silence of the penthouse was gone. It had been replaced by the clumsy but joyful sound of a piano duet, Arthur and Sarah, the smell of Mrs. Davies's weekend apple pies, and the constant, busy energy of Clara Sullivan. The red room was now a bright, sunny yellow, and Seraphina, no longer a silent shadow, was a chatty, bright, and fiercely intelligent 8-year-old. Clara, watching them from the doorway, smiled as she packed her briefcase. She was no longer a nanny. She was the full-time director of the Blackwell Cares Initiative, a foundation she had entirely rebuilt to fund and support at-risk youth and family shelters. Her mother's debts were paid, and she was thriving in a top-tier care facility. "Staying for dinner, Clara?" Arthur asked. He was by the piano, his tie loosened. The hard, corporate edge he once wore was gone, replaced by a softer, warmer presence. "Can't tonight," she said. "Visiting my mum. Why?" "I was just wondering," he said, clearing his throat, suddenly looking nervous. "The opera gala is next week. It's not a foundation event. I was hoping you would accompany me as my date." Clara looked at him. Not the intimidating billionaire, but just a man, awkwardly asking her out. She smiled, a real, warm smile. "I'd love to, Arthur, but I should warn you, I'm terrible at sitting still." "I'm counting on it," he replied, smiling back. As she walked to the elevator, Sarah launched herself from the sofa and tackled her in a hug. "You're coming back tomorrow, right? For the field trip?" 8 a.m. sharp, boss," Clara laughed, hugging the girl tight. "I promise." She stepped into the golden elevator, and the doors slid shut. She leaned against the wall, a small smile on her face. She had walked into this building, a desperate waitress with $43 to her name, expecting to be eaten alive. She was walking out having unmasked a monster, healed a family, and built a new future. Her simple trick, the ability to see the real person behind the tantrum, hadn't just saved Sarah. It had saved them all. Clara proved that you don't need a PhD in psychology to solve an impossible problem. Sometimes, all you need is the grit, the observation, and the empathy of a waitress who has seen it all. She didn't just expose the real monster. She healed an entire family by simply refusing to believe the customer was always right. What did you think of Beatrice's downfall? Was Arthur blind, or just a victim of a master manipulator? Let me know in the comments below if you saw that twist coming. This story was a marathon to create, and if you enjoyed watching Clara and Sarah get their justice, please show your support by hitting that like button. It genuinely helps our channel more than you know. And if you love dramatic stories where the underdog comes out on top and hidden truths are brought to light, make sure you subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. We have brand new stories coming every single week, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Thank you for watching.